This is the third episode in a series of 9 videos about improving camel milk production in Kenya. And this third one is about breeds and breeding management. Now, the culmination of good breeding management is in the birth of a healthy, strong calf. But there are several indicators one should be aware of to make sure that you're ready for a successful calving. About 1 month before your camel is going to give birth, you will notice the ligaments either side of her tail relax, and this causes 2 dips either side of her tail, and this means that she will be giving birth within about 30 days. Closer to the day itself, you will notice that the camel separates itself from the herd. It becomes restless and tries to move away into the bush to give birth in privacy. It's important that your herdsmen are fully alert so that she does not get lost in the bush, and they should try and bring her back to the boma so that she can give birth in safety without being left out behind without the rest of the herd. Calving itself may only take between 15 and 20 minutes. First-time calvers, like the one you see here, often take longer. They are themselves very scared, and they can be nervous, and it can sometimes be quite difficult to make it bond with the calf. Camels are seasonal breeders. This means that they're not getting pregnant all year round, particularly in the very dry areas of northern Kenya. The breeding season is related to rainfall and the amount of vegetation available, and it's not just the duration of the fertility period of the female that is affected, but also the males in the dry season won't be sexually active. They will become sexually active during the wet seasons when there's good nutrition. So you tend to get peaks in calving. You might find the years following a dry season, in those months there will be no calves born, but then you'll have a large number born 13 months after the previous wet season when they all became pregnant. The problem with seasonal breeding, it means that some years you'll have all of your animals lactating and other years none or very few lactating. This means you cannot be a regular supplier to the market. Some years you'll be plenty, and other years you won't be able to fulfill your orders. So they are seasonal breeders. They're also induced ovulators, which is a bit like the cat or the rabbit, which means that you actually need the act of mating by the male for the female to release her egg to be fertilized. So this is why artificial insemination has often been a problem, and it's been very difficult to produce offspring through artificial insemination, particularly if the semen has been stored. That would be a very quick and easy way for us to improve the quality of our animals. But in the camels we have not yet succeeded. Even in the Middle East, where a lot of research is going on, there are still problems in producing artificially inseminated success stories. Camels, again, are fairly slow growers, although they put on weight at the same rate as cattle. So on good seasons, a camel can be putting on half a kilo to even 1 kilo of meat per day. So the growth rate is okay, but they mature relatively late. So your female camel will probably first get pregnant at 4 years old, and then with a 13-month pregnancy she'll calve when she's 5 years old. That's much later than a cow. Then your calving interval generally is 24 months. So you'll get 1 calf every 2 years, which is again much slower than with cattle. With good management, you can reduce the age of first calving from 5 years down to 4.5 years. And also with good management, you can reduce that calving interval to 20 months. So you can increase your productivity. The males start breeding at about 9 or 10 years of age, generally even a bit older when they're bigger and heavier than the other bulls, and then they can become the dominant bull. and they can live up to about 24, 25 years old, possibly longer. In zoo conditions in Europe and other countries where they're being fed a high quality diet of very soft forage, then they can live even as long as probably 35 or 40 years. What is interesting, although they have long calving intervals and a late age of maturity, so they're much slower than cattle, because they live much longer, they will produce the same number of calves in a lifetime. So one camel can produce up to 8 calves in its lifetime. What we do is, if you keep one bull in the herd for too long, it loses its condition. It's also good to have different combinations of genetics and breeds, and also the progeny should be mixed. We want to avoid a bull mating with his daughters or sisters, so that you get fresh blood and fresh genetics in your herd. And we're trying to avoid the inbreeding. And we keep rotating the males within the herd, so one male will be breeding for one season, and then the next season we'll put in a different male. But we're selecting the males based on what we believe to be their genetic ability or their genetic quality. So we're choosing young males from mothers which are high milk yielders, and also their fathers were the offspring of camels which had high milk yields. So we're combining those two to try and come up with a very milky animal. And we have the 3 main breeds here in Kenya: the Somali breed, and the Rendili Gabra breed, and the Turkana breed. We've also introduced, back in the 1990s, some Pakistani camels. So a lot of my animals are crossbred Pakistani-Somali. We don't keep very many Rendili or Turkana breed because the milk yields are lower. So we're looking at the more milkier Pakistani and Somali breed camels. This is camel number 128. She's got a lot of Pakistani blood in her. The Pakistani, you can tell they have the slightly droopy lips, the bottom lips, and the very orangey colour. You can also see she's got a good sized udder, often quite a lot bigger than some of the local breeds here. We also have some sub-races of camel within the Somali breed. There is the Galab, which is a smallish, grey, but very hardy camel with small feet, but its milk production is not particularly impressive. The Galab. Galab they don't have particularly big bodies. They're quite hardy, so they put up with droughts. They don't get thin that rapidly in a dry season. But their milk production isn't great. They've got a medium to low milk production. But they're very hardy, and many of the Somali camels you'll find of this type. There are also some other types of Somali camel which are much milkier. We have the Hur camel, and they're very good milk producers. This is what we call the Hur breed of Somali camel. They tend to be longer in the body. Again, they can often be a reddish or darker colour. But also, if you look at her lips, one of the traits of the Hur camel is that they often have hairless lips, or less hair on their lips. And these are the milkiest of the camels in Kenya, so they've got the highest milk yields. They do lose condition quite rapidly in a dry season or in the droughts, mainly because they're putting a lot of their energy into the milk production. So they do tend to lose condition. You can see her hump we've milked off her hump, if you like, so her hump has sagged to the side. She's an old lady, but again she's done very well, producing a lot of calves, and one of the milkier camels in our herd. Okay, here we have again the 2 subtypes of Somali camel. The one in the front is the Galab, smaller. The one in the behind is the longer Hur type camel. You can see she's already losing condition. They both gave birth roughly within a day or 2 of each other. The Galab, you can see she's still got a big fat hump, good body condition. The Hur, the one with a lot of milk, with the 2 little calves following her, she's already losing condition, but probably because she's producing a lot of milk. Now those are not twins. Camels very rarely have twins. And then we also have a siftar race, which is a very tall, quite a good meat animal, but generally large in body. But again, the milk production is only average. So this is the third breed or race of Somali type of camel, which we call a siftar camel. They tend to be much taller than the others. So her shoulder height in this case was 1.96. Siftar are normally about 2 meters high at the shoulder. And again, they would make probably a good meat animal because of their large body size. In terms of milk, they're reasonable producers, but they're still not as good producers as the Lahore type of camel. They're very, very useful animals in their own right. Probably you wouldn't use them so much for riding or cart pulling because they're too tall. So if you want a good working animal for draft purposes, you want a wide, beefy animal, but not too tall. The taller they are, the less stable they are, and the less efficient they are at pulling carts or pulling plough.
You can tell when a male camel is ready for breeding when he comes into must, a highly sexually active state, and he shows aggression to other camels. The glands on the back of his head secrete a black oily substance, and he also has a very typical stance where he stands with his head in the air. He flaps his tail up and down, covering himself in urine and feces, and also he exudes his dula, or his inflatable palate. So female camels, since they're induced ovulators, have to be mated several times, anything between 3 to 7 times over a period of 1 month. Pregnancy can be detected using ultrasound machines, etc., but here in Kenya we don't have any access to ultrasound machines, and the way we tell whether a camel is pregnant or not is whether it lifts its tail when the bull or when one of the herdsmen approaches it. This is a simple indication the animal is pregnant, and it normally starts this behavior of lifting the tail about 1 month or 6 weeks after getting pregnant. To ensure a successful breeding program, you should have one breeding bull to cover up to 30 female camels in one season. If you have more camels than this, you will need to rest the bull and bring in a second bull to cover the remaining animals.